friends, welcome to episode 122 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I'm Sarah.
I'm Rob.
How we doing, Rob?
I think I'm okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm okay. It's been some weird work, but not too bad. I'm keeping my head above water.
Able to de-stress just a little bit.
Just a little. Looking forward to my game this weekend.
Yeah.
I do have it this weekend, which will be nice. Keeping that going along. Didn't get anything exciting built for it ahead of time, but I think the session after this is the one that I'm gonna probably need to have stuff for.
Now, prep wise, how you feeling? You seem like you kind of had an idea where we were going to be going next session. So
yeah, I've got a very good idea. I think the things that I need to work on more is my if-then chart.
Yeah, gotcha.
Because I want you guys to feel like you have control over the situation more.
Sure.
So
sure.
I'm going to kind of work off of that a little bit more instead of having this event kind of lead to this event. More like, hey, if you guys do this, then this can happen.
Yeah.
But you guys can stop it this way if you want.
Yeah,
kind of a thing. So,
right on.
Yeah, so I'm looking to lighten it up a little bit and just have some fun with you guys and let you guys enjoy this part because it's kind of the closing of this act a little bit.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It definitely could feel a drawing to a close. Where we're going to kind of confront everybody and just say, all right, look, get your crap together.
Yeah. Get it in a bag, take it to the crap store. Don't care.
I have been in full scale game prep mode for the entire week.
You are neck deep in Savage Worlds.
I'm neck deep in everything right now, man. You should see how I'm.
No, I've seen some of your models.
I've had a slow week work wise,
which is nice.
Working from home, it's nice because then I can just pop over into the craft studio and just work, get something going while I'm going.
Studio,
yeah,
isn't that lovely to say?
Studio.
That's
it's
wonderful.
Nice.
I'm glad you have that.
So one of our friends and listeners lent me 2 giant Rubbermaid tubs full of his Hearst Arts molds.
Yeah.
And his shaker tables and his dehydrator to help dry the pieces out and stuff like that. So we spent the better part of Saturday, shotgunning Breaking Bad and watching making Hearst Arts molds.
Yeah, watching molds dry.
Now those are going on to the city board that I was telling you about building.
Yep.
And that's kind of coming along.
Okay.
Definitely need some more molding to do.
Sure.
But that's in the works. I have a handful of minis that I still need to get painted. And I also have some 3D printing that I was doing the other day that I was showing you of a little camp set.
I thought that was pretty cool.
There's these cute little 3D printed tents that I did and a campfire and stuff like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them on some MDF board as little scatter pieces.
Sure.
So that we can dynamically make a little campsite and stuff like that.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
But I mean, I've got so many irons in the fire right now. And then during some of my other free time, then like you said, I'm hip deep in Savage Worlds right now. Was trying to translate a lot of my game notes over to Campfire Blaze.
Yes.
Which is an online note-taking and world-building tool.
Yep.
Kind of along the lines of a World Anvil or a Scrivener or something like that.
Right.
One of the YouTubers I watched suggested it, and they were sponsored by it, so I decided to give it a check out.
Sure.
Seems to be working okay so far.
Funny how that works.
And then today, for anybody who is interested in the Savage Worlds setting, I am on the unofficial Savage Worlds Discord. And if you do a search for it, you can pretty easily find it. And they made an announcement today that there was a Swag Timber bundle going out.
At Drive-Thru RPG, right?
And yeah, on Drive-Thru RPG. See, there's a Savage Worlds is really great for having little micro editions on Drive-Thru RPG. People will just make a $2 PDF of some really nice additional rules.
Right.
Usually just pretty focused stuff hey, the summon ally spell or power is really cool, but it's also kind of limited. Wouldn't it be great if it did a bunch of other things? And here's an expanded rule set for it. We call it Summoner Circle. Boom. $2.
Right.
So the Swagtember bundle was a gigantic bundle of like probably over 50 different pieces. $110 worth of Savage Worlds materials all bundled together for $55.
See, you can't beat that.
You can't beat that. And I spent the afternoon going through it. And
You know what that reminds me of? Is like going to a con and going to like the huckster's room and finding the used PDF section. You're just grabbing stuff because it's 50% off or less.
Yeah.
You're like, I need this. I don't care if it's tattered on the edge. I want it. You know, I can fill up my bookshelf with everything that I need. Yeah, that's what that felt like right there.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So
I'm
well, good for you.
Super
good
excited
for you.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Always good to have more rules to figure things out. So,
well, it's nice to have more options. And the great thing about these little micro rule sets is that, they're very focused, so it's very easy just to throw them out. They're not integrated with anything. They're very modular in nature.
Yeah.
But they're also focused on things that are pretty common. So, if a player says, hey, we've got a week before we're adventuring, can I work on potions or something?
Right.
Yeah, I got rules for that now.
Nice.
Nice. Someone says, okay, can I summon this creature instead of that creature? Yes, I have rules for that now, you know?
Yep.
So it's nice just to have those options and just drop them in as needed.
Very cool. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I like when there are more rules. I remember like the second edition and 3.5 where you'd have like the extra books, like the Complete Druid or like the Fighter's Guide to something or other was like the 30.5.
Like Tome and Blood and Sword and Fist or something like that.
Yeah, where you had like a bunch of extra stuff, and it was cool that you had like individualized books for each one of
Prestige
the classes. Yeah. But and that you could use them or not, and that was really kind of cool. I mean, everybody wanted to use them, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get a little extensive into that with like Palladium kind of went nuts with that as well, where you'd end up having like world books, but also like errata books that were all kinds of extra pieces, and it was hard to follow. I mean, Robotech was huge in that. And it was, you learn like, 15, 20 pages about Southern Cross, and then you'd have like 40 pages of gear and equipment and like new missile rules and things like that. And you're like, oh, geez, okay.
Right.
So, yeah, it was always interesting to see that kind of stuff and get the excitement of like new stuff out of it. So.
And, I think that the thing is, though, we haven't even played our first official game of Savage Worlds yet. We literally just did our Session 0 last month. My game is coming up on the 18th of this month. Yeah. So still even got 3 weeks out from it, 2.5. So I don't want to overwhelm everybody with like...
do it.
Hey guys, I know you just made your characters, but here's 300 more options for you.
Yeah. I'm literally going to steer clear of those, at least for the first couple of sessions. Just let's figure out the feel of this game, where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, speaking of which...
Figuring out the feel of the game.
One of the things that we're talking about specifically this week is location and character-centric games. And what it really means to have the difference between that. So when you're storytelling, you traditionally have one or the other. There are some stories that kind of do hybrids. Yeah. But for the most part, you're doing one or the other.
And I think this is one of those things where... as we were kind of coming up with show topics, it was one of those topics where it was like, this is something we do subconsciously.
Very much so.
That, like, talking about it out loud is a little weird, but, like...
Yeah. So when we're talking about character or location-centric games, we're talking about where the story is anchored, how it's anchored, how the protagonists will be focusing on the story as it moves, and... kind of the general scope of how the story loops, and that's one of the things that I get into is like coming back home. What does that really mean? And the other thing to it that we kind of discovered as we were talking more about it is, are the events happening to the protagonist or around the protagonist?
Yeah. That's
is it an action or a reaction kind of situation?
So let's start out before we start getting into dicing out how these things react to each other and stuff. That we always start out with a definition for what we're talking about.
Right,
so,
right.
We're talking about character-centric or location-centric. So, probably the best example I can think of off the top of my head is the difference between Star Trek The Next Generation and Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
100% agree.
Okay. So, Star Trek The Next Generation is a character-centric adventure.
Yes.
Okay, because other than the fact that, the Enterprise itself is a location, but they're on the Enterprise as much as they're off the Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
They're always dealing with, every new week is a new alien race that they're talking to, trying to bring them into the Federation or solve some sort of problem or whatever.
Right.
Dealing with the Klingons and the Romulans, they're bouncing all over the place, okay?
Yeah.
The story is following the characters.
Right.
Okay. The characters are the ones initiating the actions. The characters are the one going out and getting into the action and stuff like that. It's not really, in most instances, not coming to the Enterprise.
Right.
And the Enterprise isn't really in and of itself a catalyst for the adventure.
Right. On the other hand, I'll juxtaposition here just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And stay within Star Trek. Star Trek Voyager, I think, was more location with the ship because they were traveling. But the ship was always the center point of the travel.
I saw you write that down on the show sheet, and I
cringed at the fact that I brought up Voyager.
No. Look, don't get me wrong, I'm a Trekker, but I'm not...
Do you want to come back to this?
Voyager's a weird one, because Voyager in a lot of ways is character-centric, but I see exactly where you're going with it, in that it was almost reverse Battlestar Galactica.
Very much so. Very much so.
But I
in Battlestar Galactica, the ship was a character.
Here's my problem.
So.
I don't think you're wrong. I think it's a sticky example.
It is a sticky example.
Okay,
but at least in Star Trek,
I'm trying to keep it clean.
All right. We'll continue then.
The
DS9.
The clean example is Deep Space Nine.
Deep Space Nine is definitely the locational. I 100% agree because the 100% the plot wraps around
Deep
that.
Space Nine. They named the show after it. It is...
Yeah, Babylon 5, same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. The ship... If those things didn't exist in the story is over. That's it.
There were times in the story where where Deep Space Nine wasn't even Deep Space Nine anymore. The Cardassians and the Dominions swept in and took it over, and it became Tarak Nor again. You know?
Yeah. But it was still the station.
But exactly. But it was the story of the station. So even though the Federation wasn't even technically in ownership of it anymore, the story remained there.
Right.
And now we get a glimpse of what the bad guys are doing.
So to step outside of sci-fi, if you had been around at any point in the 80s, and 90s at any point, you had a lot of sitcoms. Sitcoms were almost always location-centric.
I've got a more modern example.
Okay.
The Marvel franchises.
Sure.
Okay, especially the ones on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Your Avengers.
Yep.
Character-centric.
Exceptionally character-centric.
Because they are going out, they are doing things.
Correct.
We don't know where Iron Man's going, but we're going to follow him, and he's going to get into some fights when he gets there.
Yep.
Okay. Location-centric, Daredevil.
Agreed. It's about the city.
He's the devil of Hell's Kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 4 city blocks in New York City.
Yeah. Batman, very much so as well.
Yeah, it's about Gotham City.
He is reacting to what's going on in Gotham City.
He never leaves Gotham City.
Yep, agreed. I 100% agree.
Now, Superman's more character-centric.
Yeah.
Because, sure, it takes place in Metropolis, but, not everything happens in Metropolis, and he'll fly around all over the world because he's everything.
Correct.
He's a Mary Sue.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with you on that.
But
you got shows like Saved by the Bell.
Sure.
You saw The School. Did you go to their houses ever? No. Did you?
Occasionally, but it was a very rare thing.
It was a scene. It was not a house. On the other hand, Full House, it was the house.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, it was just another room in the house was the scene. That was it.
Exactly.
Golden Girls. Most people who saw the Golden Girls could map out the entire place that they had visually in their mind and sketch the whole thing out. Because that's the whole show.
Yeah.
Love Boat. It was on the boat.
It's on the boat.
It was on the boat.
The boat is the location.
Yeah.
All right, so hopefully that paints a decent enough picture of what we're talking about. So now that we've got those things outlined,
Yep.
why is this a thing? Why are we talking about it?
Right.
So each one of these storytelling styles kind of has a kind of a right way and a wrong way to go about. I don't say maybe right and wrong are bad words, but like
I think it's a poor way of saying it. I would say that it's you can easily
they lend themselves to a certain style of storytelling,
and if you
that
stick
they
with
excel
them,
at,
it works really well.
Yes.
If you start drifting from one to the other, it can get very, very sticky for the people trying to follow.
Yes.
So agreed. I think that's the key thing that I came out of this is that once you recognize you're doing one, do one well within that story. Change for your next story. No worries about that.
Yeah.
But if you can recognize what you're doing and you can excel at that one, do it.
And to be fair, some games really excel at doing one or the other.
I agree.
I mean, thinking these over.
You're talking about game systems in
game
general?
Systems.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Game systems. Some game systems do these exceptionally well.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, we'll start talking about character-centric storytelling.
I think that's a great place to start.
So I would say this is probably the more typical style of storytelling. In that you've got, you're cringing.
No, I'm thinking. I'm thinking. Keep going.
Okay.
I'm gonna switch up when we get to location.
He's making kitty cat stinky faces.
No, not at all. My brain just immediately went to. So
I would say it's more usual for, and the reason I say that is because, most gaming, just because of market share, is like D&D, that style game. Okay?
Sure.
And D&D excels at character-driven stories.
Okay. Because
there's a presupposition within the rule system, within how the game is structured, and the style of play that it encourages to, and in fact, like if you look at the modules and stuff like that they sell, like, Lost Minds of Felendevler.
I think that was great.
Princess of the Apocalypse. Rime of the Frost Maiden. All of these are like going out into the world and having adventures. And usually it's go from location to next location to next location to next location. And you may be following a plot, but the story is with the characters, not with the locations you're stopping at.
Right.
And it happens because the characters are dynamic, and they either create or seek dynamic situations that they involve themselves in.
Agreed. And it gives them the freedom to do what they want.
Exactly.
And that's the thing is that, it's freedom, in quotes. I always do air quotes around freedom because as a storyteller, you're really directing things, let's be honest. But you have that ability to just keep right on moving.
Yeah, sure.
If the players want to move, they can transient to the next location, just keep right on going, and your story can follow them.
Yeah, and they'll find some adventure when they get there.
Yep. And
because they're the protagonists.
But it's about the journey. It's about each one of these steps. I mean, you level up by going through these journeys.
I would say character-centric stories, too, oftentimes are those stories where, like, the world doesn't move outside of their scope of vision. If you know what I'm saying? Like, the story follows the players rather than the world itself doing things that the players are getting involved in.
Yes.
And so it's almost like the world ceases to exist outside of whatever the players have gotten their noses into this time.
Yes. It is the quintessential personal RPG.
Yeah.
Where, I need to go take care of X, but I'd really like to go do this quest. I'm going to go do that quest. And while that's going on, this person is literally sitting there doing nothing,
that really
waiting for you.
bothers me in Skyrim, because they're like, Alduin is going to devour the world. We have to go urgently to defeat these dragons. And I'm like, right, but there's bandits in this mine over here, and
they have
some iron ore.
Yeah, I'm going to go do that for like a week and make a new blade. And then I'll be back, and it'll be just as critical as it was.
Oh, but then I found this other thing, so I'm going to go to this other town, and I'm going to turn that in there.
I may get married along the way.
Right. I'm going to build a house by a lake.
Yeah, and take care of 2 dragons while I'm at it. You know, and become a herald. Oh, and I'm also part of the Sijic Order. Oh, now that I'm back,
right.
Where did we leave off?
Right.
The world is in peril. That's
right. World in peril. Gotcha. Alduin, devour the world. Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That is very
much
character-centric. It is. You could almost say that centric stories tend to have an ego for the characters.
Well, they do. I mean, I'm thinking like of your classic dungeon crawl, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what is that dungeon doing unless it's being delved into by the party? Nothing. It's just sitting there being filled with treasure and goblins.
Yeah, that's fair.
So where does the adventure come from? The adventure comes from a group of dynamic characters choosing to do something dynamic. And they alter a situation, and from there, you get adventure.
Yeah.
Probably a good example of this in cinema is Lord of the Rings.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree.
Because, I mean, Frodo's journey... we follow Frodo's journey, and a handful of other characters too.
Sure.
But mostly it's Frodo's journey with the ring from the Shire to Bree to Rivendell through Moria, etc., all the way to Mount Doom. And it's his journey that we're following. Like,
right.
It doesn't matter where Frodo is; that's where the story is.
Yeah.
And if you think about it too, like the locations he gets into along the way almost don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're catalysts for those moments to be exciting,
to get some experience,
right?
Sure,
to get some experience.
Yeah.
Except for when Gandalf decides to drag the Balrog off with him so he can solo it and get all the experience for it.
I totally agree on that one.
Yeah.
Other than that, you have one character who died because he left the game.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess kind of pissed off his dad in game, and there was some backstory there, but I would say that it is that the world basically paused until they showed up at each one of those events.
Yeah.
It was just happenstance that just as they arrive at Minas Tirith, it gets attacked.
Mm-hmm. What was going on in Moria before they got there?
Yeah.
Nothing. Goblins just chilling.
That's right. And it's that kind of crap that you're like, this is character-centric storytelling.
Yeah.
And then there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
No. Absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Because honestly, what more does there need to be?
Right.
You've got a bunch of characters. You want to take them on an adventure.
Sure.
Do it.
Yeah.
It's great. Wherever they go, they're getting into some sort of an adventure. What does it matter what happens?
Yeah. And in all honesty, their backstory is barely getting integrated. I mean, realistically, you're getting little shouts from each one of the players as things go on, and it isn't until they're like, hey, I technically have the king's blood in me. Can we do something with my backstory? Let me see. Yeah, your family had an oath to keep with these bandits who did some work for them in the past. You might be able to go handle that.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing, and that's kind of where you do integrate the backstory sort of stuff is by giving them yet another catalyst to go out and adventure.
Yeah.
I think a great example of this is for any Critical Role fans out there is the Briarwood arc from season 1.
Okay. Teach me. I didn't see it.
Okay, so Percival Frederickstein von Musil-Kowalski de Rolo III is one of the characters played by Taliesin
I'm
Jaffe.
sorry, we're out of time now.
Percy is one of the characters.
Thank you.
Is played by Taliesin Jaffe. His backstory is essentially that he's a noble from a town called Whitestone.
Sure.
And at one point, his family made some sort of a deal with this other noble family called the Briarwoods. And they came to dinner one night and then just murdered everybody. And the only people he knows got away was himself, obviously, because he's still alive. And he saw his sister get away.
Okay.
But doesn't know what happened to her.
Right.
Everybody else he can pretty much confirm is dead.
Okay.
And that's it. That's the backstory he handed Matthew Mercer.
Right.
Matthew then, just real chill out of nowhere, and minor spoilers for season 1, right around episode 30-ish or so.
Sure.
Has them in the capital city of Iman, and they're talking to the sovereign of Iman because they're big. They're big important people.
Right.
They're big adventurers who've done a lot of good things for the throne.
Big damn heroes.
And he says, "Oh yeah, we're having some important people over tonight. This is this noble from here, and this is my advisor, and this is this noble from here, and here's Lord and Lady Briarwood, and you just watch Percy just go white." And you get this backstory. He's like, oh yeah, they killed my entire family, and of course the entire party's like, what do you
how do we take care of this?
Start cracking their knuckles. Yeah. They're like, all right, who do you need us to kill? Starting with them. Well, they end up going back to Whitestone,
right,
and finding out that Lord Briarwood, again, massive spoilers, sorry, is a vampire.
Okay.
And Lady Briarwood is a really powerful necromancer.
Okay.
And they are madly in love.
Oh, that's very sweet of them.
I know. And they have basically turned Whitestone into a mini Ravenloft theme park. And are trying to work on some real hardcore ritual magic and some temple underneath Whitestone Castle. And what ensues is them, again, character-centric story, traveling out from Amman, which is kind of their home base, to Whitestone, which is a new location for them, having all sorts of adventures and misadventures there and such like that.
Right.
And it's all because of Percy's backstory.
Well, I think that's great. I think that's a great way of putting it. But again, I think, to simplify, character-centric does not necessarily mean forced character backgrounds.
Sure.
And in fact, a lot of times it doesn't even come out.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's up to the players to kind of insert them. And I mean, if the storyteller decides to take one of those players and make them the centerpiece, they can. And you move on from there. The difference comes in when you get to location-centric. And it is, I wouldn't say a vast difference, but it is a notable difference.
It's a very noticeable difference, and honestly, it's one of my favorite ways of doing storytelling.
Yeah, it's just hard in RPGs.
It depends on the game.
I agree 100% with you, but it's hard because we are born to make character-centric games. We were taught to make character-centric games.
Yeah, I think the prevalence of D&D in gaming culture does a lot of damage to our ability to conceive of location-centric storytelling. There are several game systems, though, that have it actually built directly into the system.
Yep. Urban Shadows is huge. Well. City of Mist is huge on that.
City of Mist, I mean, it is the city.
Right, that's the whole thing.
Literally.
It's in the name. Urban Shadows, we're kind of talking about what's going on.
Urban Shadows, we famously talked about that. Yep. That's got a whole phase of character creation where you get together and discuss what the city is going to be.
And where you live in it and such.
Dresden Files RPG, running off the Fate system, is the exact same way.
Yeah.
Shadowrun, I would say, is very location-centric.
I think it definitely pushes itself to be.
At least core Shadowrun takes place in Seattle.
Yeah, and again, you move around the city of Seattle, you can, but it makes it still that there's still a sense of a specific location. You know where everything is in the city. You have a very good a very good design of it.
Vampire the Masquerade, and the World of Darkness, Chronicles of Darkness games. No, see, you're cringing your face at me. But think of at least from Vampire. Okay, no, other game systems, maybe not. Maybe Mage, Changelings, and that you'll go out different places. Sure. But Vampire is very city-centric.
No, I agree 100%.
Very urban. Your Prince and your Primogen and your Elysium, they're all tied to the city.
No, and that's what my face was, I remember how many storytellers that I worked with tried to make it character-centric. And it felt like a struggle every time that you played that game because you were constantly giving so much more information, and it's like hard. It just makes it very hard to follow because the game is designed to be location centric.
Yeah.
So that's the difference is that with location centric, you rarely leave the designated area. Yeah. I mean, effectively, Stardew Valley is a location centric game.
Yeah,
you adventure within the location. You know everybody in the town.
It's on the label.
Yep,
you know?
Yep. I get, which helps 100% with defining that and keeping that in your head. I mean, sometimes it's something even smaller than that, where it's just a couple of things. Like I always go back to the school as a great analogy because it's a very simple way of doing a location centric and keeping things very concise. But a small town is the same thing. A city is the same thing. I mean, Neverwinter.
Yeah,
sure, why not? Baldur's Gate. Done. You've got a whole bunch of stuff you can do in that darn city.
Absolutely.
So it makes it very easy for you to stay within a specific location, and get to know it very well. And it's that difference that the story is about the location, and the characters take part in that story.
Yes.
That's the difference there. They're reacting effectively to what's going on around them, and it's alive.
Already stuff happening there, and the protagonists happen to be there and to be involved in it.
Correct.
And it would happen. It would probably happen a lot differently without
without
protagonist
a doubt.
involvement.
Yeah.
But kind of like we talked about, what is that dungeon doing if it's not being delved by the adventurers?
Yep.
Nothing. It's sitting there full of treasure and goblins. Well, what is the city doing if the adventurers aren't there?
Right.
Actually, a whole lot, because this guy's doing this, and this guy's doing that, and there's a whole cult of people doing this,
Right. And I think that's the key, is that you can very easily take a location-centric game and make it feel very personal and tie it very tightly to your players. Whether they're coming into the city for the first time or someone's lived there all their life, there are people, there are names. You're not having to come up with hundreds of NPC names for your core people as they shift through multiple areas and worlds and islands and transverse things. It's all happening. Bob the Barber is still Bob the Barber until he dies.
Yeah.
And you have a blacksmith. I mean, it harkens itself back to games like Diablo, and where you have a central hub that you return to every time you're done with your little questy stuff.
Yeah.
And
you
you
got
do
your
your
blacksmith,
thing. Yep.
and you got Deckard Cain there.
Yep.
You've got,
and it changes.
And you learn their names.
Yeah.
You learn their little stories and stuff like that. Even if you never listen to their backstories, you at least know their every time you click on Hrotley, he's going to say, greetings.
Yes, exactly.
I remember that all these years later,
Yep,
greetings.
yep.
I can still just hear his voice.
And that's the kind of feel that you have, is that your players then get invested with hearing and seeing these common individuals. There's a lot of TV shows that do this, that create a home environment.
I always keep coming back to Deep Space Nine, Quark's Bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what a great, iconic location that was, We actually have a question in the live chat that I think... I'm wondering if this was a throwaway question, but it is a lot more poignant than I think you thought it was.
Okay.
What about Cheers? Was it really about the bar? So, I think the question you're really asking there is, are the characters important in a location-centric story? Because we're doing a lot of talking about how it's the locations story. But yes, it actually really super is, because it's through your interactions with the location that is going to expose who your characters are.
Yes.
The location itself is the crucible by which your characters will be tempered.
Yep.
And all of their true attributes, their stories, are going to get filtered out through that.
Yeah.
Through that story.
And I think a poignant point to prove that Cheers was location-centric was the last episode of the end of the show. One of the last things one of the characters does is go over and adjust a picture. And the picture was put on the wall and was just cocked off slightly because it was to represent one of the dead actors, one of the actors who had passed.
Oh.
And I believe so.
Yeah.
And what you realize is that the set wrapped around those characters, around those actors, was there to promote story. So the location was just as much there. I mean, things came into the location, things left the location. Maybe the location was being sold to somebody else, and that was changing everything.
Yeah.
Was Cheers going to get a different name? Oh my gosh, it's crazy winter outside, and we're all trapped at Cheers.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you not have that location be as iconically locked in as anything else?
So the follow-up question is, why did that specific bar matter? It mattered because that's where all of the characters, all of our protagonists in this story, had a common ground.
Correct. It was a very small set.
I mean, yeah,
and scene setup.
They were all the. I mean, it was very very small. They were the characters that gave that story definition,
without a doubt.
Okay, I mean, they are the protagonists. So it's still like their story. I mean, I guess
Right.
I guess what I'm trying to get across is, like, the story is about the location, but the location isn't the story.
Yes.
It's just where the story takes place, and it's where the story's anchored.
Correct.
Without Cheers as a bar, without Deep Space Nine as a space station, those characters would not have gotten together, had the interactions that they did, told the stories that they did, and had the relationships that they did.
Correct. Now, I will step one degree away from Cheers and say that Seinfeld is a location-centric story. Now, granted, the locations were scene, but it was the restaurant, his apartment.
Yeah.
And very rarely was there quests outside of that. But it was what was going on in those moments.
I'm gonna say you're correct that it's location centric.
But it was still wrapped around the characters.
But I think the location was the city.
Correct.
It was New York, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, I want to say it was New York because I want to say that Costanza worked for one of the New York the Mets or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean you're absolutely correct. It's a little difficult to describe that it's where the story is anchored, but not the location isn't the story.
Correct.
It just happens to be the catalyst for the story that all the characters in that location are telling together collectively.
Correct.
Deep Space Nine is important because it is the point of conflict between the Federation, the Bajorans, the Cardassians, and then later the Dominion.
Right. Now, I'm going to put this out there. One of the things that becomes very easy to see once you take you step back to the 5,000-foot view of everything that's location-centric is that location-centric stories tend to be survivorships. You are surviving something.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be harsh, but if you find that all of your people are in a location surviving, that in that location,
well, we can back that off. Less surviving and more just shared common experience.
But it is a typical trope that comes out of location centrics.
Sure.
Is that survivorship? Aliens is a survivorship on a specific location.
Yeah, absolutely. First the Sulaco.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the Sulaco?
No. Keep going. Regardless,
the Nostromo was the second.
Correct.
One, was in
correct.
Aliens.
Correct.
Yeah, but anyway, so yeah, it was. I want to say I think it was the Sulaco.
It'll get clarified very momentarily in our
in the first one, and then it was LV-426 on the second one.
Yep.
Yeah, very location centric.
But you'll find that that's a common trope
Yeah.
for location centric. So if you find a survivor type of situation, most likely it's going to be location centric.
Yeah.
Granted, you have things that aren't location centric. I mean, your Left 4 Dead kind of situations where there's travel involved, or what was the other big video game that just came out? Series. Jesus, I'm lost. But any of the zombie series are now becoming more character centric than location centric.
Mm-hmm. Back 4 Blood.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So, but you don't think, but like one of your favorites in Raccoon City, or not Raccoon City, but in Silent Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Silent Hill.
Yeah.
There you go.
Again, it's on the tin.
But it fits within that framework. I'm not saying it always is, but that's a good way to identify something that might be location centric, and you can you usually will find that in direction.
Yeah, at least thinking of Silent Hill. Honestly, most the first 3 Silent Hill games, I'm actually going to say those are character centric. I'm actually going to say they're character centric because it's more about the characters and what they're going through and what they bring to the story than anything that's the city has going on. It's
true.
Again,
but again, that's that
Silent
thing
Hill's
about
a sticky.
But that's what we're saying is that there's
a
a drift from both character centric and there's a drift from location centric.
Mm-hmm.
You can be exceptionally location centric, where literally the players are just surviving or are following what and reacting to the plot.
Right.
That is definitely the far extreme edge of that. The other end of it is it's a location where the characters their stories are coming together to blend. And I think that's what City of Mist tends to do more so, is that all of these stories are blending within the city. So the players are really bringing in the plot and the heartbeat of what's going on. But it's still location-centric because they're not traveling to handle those situations.
I almost feel like the quickest way to tell if you've got a location or character-centric story is to do the sexy lamp test.
Yeah, oh, no, that's definitely a thing.
But do the sexy lamp test, and for those of you not familiar, it's the idea of can you replace a character with a sexy lamp?
Mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't change the story at all, like that's a bad thing. They failed the sexy lamp test.
Yep.
But I almost feel like if you could do that with a location, you know, like a I don't know, sexy parking lot test or something. You know, could this story take place literally anywhere as opposed to where it's taking place?
Right. Could it just move instantaneously?
Like I mentioned the Mines of Moria earlier.
Right.
Could that have just been a cave with some goblins in it? Did it have to be Moria?
Could have been a city with goblins in it?
Could have been a city with goblins in it. Sure.
You know.
Was it important that it was Moria when that scene happened?
No.
Not really.
They were just traveling.
I'm sure there's a bunch of Tolkien nerds out there, like, you know, soiling themselves that with Moria, all the lore and stuff like that. And look, all the lore is very important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not dumping on Lord of the Rings.
Right.
I'm just saying is that when you think of what place that took in the story of they go into a location, they get jumped by a bunch of goblins, suddenly there's a Balrog, and they lose Gandalf, and the rest of them get out alive.
Yeah.
That's the function that takes place in the story, is to remove Gandalf from it and give everybody a good harrowing before they move on with their adventure. Could that have happened anywhere other than Moria? Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I completely agree. And that's where we're kind of blending here. So when we're talking about
I'm just going to drop Nakatomi Tower because I want to, Nox says in the live chat.
I'm sorry, Overwatch just went to go get himself a sexy lamp, so... All right, so when you're talking about the location, and we're talking about location-centric, this is where your players can get vetted, or not vetted, but can get invested in the story right off the bat.
Yes.
Because at that point, now you can create these sub-locations that are not necessarily plot-centric for you, but they're going to be affected by the plot.
And this is my favorite thing to do in location-based storytelling, is coming up with the fun little locations that are going to be familiar scenes for everybody.
Yep, the bar that they go to hang out at, a common merchant that has the things that they need and they tend to go back to, the thieves' den who's in the area, and then and maybe the inn to that thieves' den that they always go back to. You know, that kind of stuff definitely helps the players come back to the same names again and again and again that aren't just villains.
Yeah.
You know, if you can have reoccurring NPCs who are always there for them, that's great. I mean, Final Fantasy did that with some of its stuff, and people loved that crap. When Sid showed up in Final Fantasy, whatever version you're currently playing in, you were happy to see Sid again.
Yeah,
you know, that
absolutely.
kind of a thing. You know, anytime that you can bring back people, I think it adds a certain level of enjoyment. And when they die or are removed, it's serious.
Yeah.
It's a moment.
Absolutely.
So,
and I think changes to those NPCs, because those NPCs become familiar, they become part of the character's, home structure, that drinking establishment, that common merchant that they always go to for their adventuring supplies, all these people, they can be great indicators of changes in the story.
Yep.
And so you don't have to emotionally affect your characters. If you just emotionally affect your NPCs and they go to visit that NPC, they're like, "Oh God, what happened?" They like, "Hey, Bob, we're back at your your little apothecary store here. We're gonna go out on another adventure. You got any more of those healing potions you always have in stock?" Actually, no. What do you mean no? You always have them in stock. In fact, you said you get more because we buy them. Yeah, I know. I did get more. But then there's a war going on out there. So, some government agents came in and they bought up all of my stock. They said they needed it for the war supplies.
Yep.
I'm fresh out.
Yeah.
I mean, I made some good money, but, I don't know what I'm supposed to do for the rest of the week.
Yeah, the other one that always got to me is okay, so the troll comes in and attacks town, and there's a big fight in town, and everybody gets, okay, everything's all right, and you're like, okay, well, we're gonna go do this, and I'm definitely gonna have to go get my armor fixed. You show up at the armory. There's a hole in the roof. Mm-hmm. There's stuff piled inside the building, and names start getting dropped. Oh my God, where's Golov? Where's his daughter Orsi? And now you're concerned.
Yeah.
Now the players are concerned about uncovering rubble for a few hours to see if they're okay. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of stuff that you want. You want that investment, that ownership.
Yeah. Going back to like Deep Space Nine.
Yep.
Like I said, Quark's bar was probably my favorite location, just simply because you could always use him as a barometer for what was going. He was like the pulse of Deep Space Nine.
Very much so.
And you'd see him, and like all this turmoil, and the Federation soldiers are going all over the place because they think they're going to get invaded by the Cardassians, and they can't repel their attack. They're going to take the station over, and there's Quark, mildly annoyed, and unpacking a bunch of crates. And they're like, Quark, what are you doing? You've got to get out of here. You've got to evacuate. He's like, first off, this is my bar. I'm not leaving it.
Right.
Second off, I got to unpack all these bottles of Kanar because that's what the Cardassians drink.
Right. I've got to take down all this other crap and
Right.
replace it with what they're going to drink.
I'm not going to be able to stock any of this. What is this, root beer stuff you guys drink? It's awful. Dreadful. Glad to get it out of here.
Exactly. I'm going to go put it back in the freezer and hope to God it dies.
Right.
You know,
but using him kind of as a barometer
No,
for like
100%.
just that change of the wind, and it's really great to be able to do that with your NPCs.
Yep. So when we start talking then about hybriding, where you blend from one to the next.
Yeah.
Where you've got stories that are kind of a bleed of both of those. One of the big things you kind of want to build into that is the hub, where your adventures return to. Someplace, even if that hub moves, and that's a common theme in a lot of the Diablo-like games, where this is your hub for levels 1 through 10, and this is your hub from 10 to 20, and this is your hub, or this act is in this hub, and this act is in this hub.
Yeah.
And you shift that way. But meta-wise, your players know that they've now moved to a new hub, and this is the new hub that they're going to be established in, and they build up and work on that. It's not like they don't have access to the old one, but this is the new base camp, if you will.
But this is where the story is now.
Correct.
And we're going to go out, we're going to go adventuring, but we're always going to come back to the location. So we've got a spurts of a character-centric story where we go out into the world, we adventure, we delve dungeons, whatever, and then we come back to the hub, where the location is.
Yeah, where things have shifted and changed maybe a little to kind of accommodate what happened.
And maybe the adventures you go out on are what changes the location.
Yeah.
And then you maybe move on to a new location. It's actually something I'm doing in my own personal game.
Yep, very much so.
Where I started you guys out in Anvil. I established a little bit of what Anvil was like and whatnot. And then I was like, okay, there is a bandit threat. And it's not an Anvil. It's out in the Colovian Highlands.
Yep.
Go get them, boys.
Yep.
And you did. You went out. You did that. That was its own kind of location. And then we brought it back to Anvil.
Yep.
Where it's old and familiar. What this reminds me a lot of, you mentioned Diablo.
Yeah.
I'm going right back to Dark Souls.
Okay. I know not everybody's a Dark Souls person, but go for it.
So, especially Dark Souls 1 and... Dark Souls 2 and 3. In Dark Souls 2, you had Majula. And in Dark Souls 3, you had Firelink Shrine.
Yep.
And these were essentially your hubs. There was a lot of different places you could
It's where you resurrected when you died, right?
No, you resurrected whatever bonfire you stayed at last.
Oh, okay, okay.
And that's kind of the juxtaposition.
Okay.
Is that this is where the Firekeeper is.
Okay.
So through the Firekeeper, you do all your leveling up.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So if you're going to increase your stats,
sure.
Spend your experience points essentially.
Yep.
If you're going to improve your weapons, there's also a merchant there that will sell you some of your basic supplies and stuff like that.
Okay.
If you're going to improve your Estus Flask, which is your healing potion, basically.
Sure.
That's where you're going to do that and stuff like that, all back at those hubs. And then from there, you go out adventuring into whatever dark, evil frontier that you're going to go on.
Okay.
And then when you need anything, when you need that rest and refit, you need to level up, you need to improve your weapon, you found some interesting things out there and you want to do something about it, you come back to the hub, where the Firekeeper is, where the blacksmith is, where the merchant is, and that's very much in opposition to like Dark Souls 1, where you didn't even get the ability to teleport until halfway through the game.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you didn't need a Firekeeper to level up. You could do it at any bonfire. And so in Dark Souls 1, it was very character-centric, because the story was wherever the hell you were. Your home was whatever bonfire you were resting at out there in the world. You didn't have anywhere to come back to. Firelink Shrine was a a central location in Dark Souls 1.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely where you know, kind of the middle point of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it was not a hub.
Right.
In the proper sense.
Okay. All right, I get you. So, so in my opinion, as we were going through this and thinking about things, we did hit the reason why I was making my faces early on about Dungeons and Dragons being a character centric.
He squints and he kind of scrunches up his mouth a little bit.
Yeah. But really, what it comes down to in my head is like I think OG Dungeons and Dragons was the problem of the dungeon. The dungeon was a location, but really it was just the adventure. Once you were done with it, you left it.
Dungeon didn't matter.
That's right.
Dungeon ceased to exist when you left it, and did not exist before you got there.
Correct. And I think that's the part that really drives the fact that is character centric. And I think that if you take some of this to heart, try and build yourself into your stories something that is location centric.
Mm-hmm.
With aspects of character centricity to it, meaning give your players some place to call home and to make home and feel relatively safe in and have events occur at. And I say relatively safe in the sense that they are creating adventures within that small area.
Yeah.
And it is evolving and changing.
That's not to say nothing bad can ever happen there.
Right.
But what you want is a decent enough balance that they can feel safe there. They can feel like it's home.
Mm-hmm.
They can feel like it's a place that they can set up in, invest in,
discover a little bit,
have friends in.
Yep.
And give them a couple locations where they also feel like are home. Their drinking hole, their favorite merchant, their whatever.
Yep.
And if it's and the reason I say this is because if it's threatened,
they will protect it.
But
they have to feel like it's home
they'll
first.
Be that much more invested in it if they do feel that way.
And that'll invest them in your story.
Yeah.
And then you have permanent hooks. You have individuals there who will hand them their hooks.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be invested.
And it's the difference. It's the difference then between there are goblins threatening townspeople. Oh, okay, I get my sword. And there are goblins threatening Bob's bar. Oh, hell no.
Exactly.
I get my sword.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. That's where I drink my stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I tell you I go to get drunk.
Yes, it is. Why does this feel like we're moving into Ryan's territory?
Yeah. That's
all right.
the name of the movie.
Yeah. So I want to hit this Discord question because I think it'll open up a little bit more discussion as we're doing it.
Yeah, I agree.
So Knox asked a couple really good questions, some of which we've already highlighted. I can see how certain locations might possess a specific feeling or meaning for the general population of the world that resides in, but without a personal meaning or purpose for the players, what good is it? That's very true.
Simply none.
It isn't.
If you have no player investment in it, literally none.
Right. So getting a hook is sometimes hard for those very reasons.
Sure.
Like, yeah, if you drop your players into a place as their first location and say, like, okay, you're here because you were all hired for various ways by this clerical order to go clear out this tomb because bad things are happening there and they don't want the bodies of the other old clerics to be, screwed up.
Yada, yada, yada. Blah, blah, blah. I'm hired.
Right.
What you've just told me is this is a job. I don't care.
Exactly. And it's up to you to tell me who hired you to be here. You're hooked to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a great start point, but really doesn't give you any investment. So I agree.
Right. Now, on the other hand, if I'm like, Rob, your character's a cleric, this tomb is actually dedicated to your god. This is where a lot of your clergy is laid to rest. Specifically, the master of your master.
Mm-hmm.
The person who taught you all your stuff about your clerical stuff is buried here.
Yeah. So now it has meaning, but it's not quite an investment. It just has meaning.
Now it has a little more meaning, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas it can very much change once someone is sending you.
Yeah, exactly.
How can you make sure that you're not just giving your players pointless fun facts instead of tools and means to make an impactful narrative choice and experience? So I think the key there really is that fun facts are great, but fun facts are different when they come from an impacting or an invested NPC. So, for instance, if it's been like 3 sessions that they've been going to this pub and, returning to it, and the pub guy, the owner has been really cool to them or kind of been a jerk at times or whatever. And then finally, like late one night, it's a quiet night, it's like a Wednesday or whatever, and they're all in there after their adventure, and he buys them around, and they're like, he bought us around. Why did he buy us around? Kind of a thing. And comes out and like talks with them about his days and what he used to do. And if he hadn't taken that arrow to the knee, he may have finished that last quest that he was planning on going on. And so he tells them about this cave. So now the players are invested and they're learning about history of what's going on out in the world. Now, this may be a quest that they could take, or it could be just a piece of information about something greater that's happened. They find out he took an arrow to a knee in a war that happened recently, and that's why he ended up settling here. Okay, that's some history, some lore, but they're already invested in this guy.
Yeah.
So they're accepting this information at a different level.
I think that's the key thing is that it's a relationship you're curating, and not just like, you're not going to just give investment,
right?
I think that's really what the point of this whole thing comes down to.
Right.
I can't just give a 5-minute synopsis to Rob about a description on something and have him be invested in a thing.
Agreed.
5 minutes is information. 5 or 6 game sessions of him going and interacting with this NPC, him finding out this NPC's backstory, getting to the point where he's asking about, hey, how's your daughter? She gotten that blacksmith apprenticeship yet? You were saying last time?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she did. Yeah, that's investment.
Yeah.
Now, when he's no longer the barkeep at the bar,
right,
and he's, he's Bob the barkeep at the Forecastle, the bar that you always go to.
Yep.
And you always sit in that corner seat. Even though it squeaks a little, that's your seat. The squeaky seat is yours.
Yep.
And you once punched a man to get it back.
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
That's investment. So now when Bob, the bartender at the Forecastle, comes over to your squeaky bar stool and says, there was this one adventure I never finished. I used to be an adventurer like you.
Yeah.
And I just, I have fond memories of this dungeon that's out there. You're like,
go on.
I'm going to go finish Bob's dungeon crawl.
Yeah.
Because it's Bob's. And I'm going to get him that treasure, and I'm going to bring it back for Bob.
Right.
You have to curate that.
Yeah. Likewise, it comes back. Oh, did your daughter get that that apprenticeship? And is she? Oh yeah, she went to the Mage Academy. She's doing great. 6 adventures later. Hey guys, can I ask a favor? I suppose. Like, you've been pouring drinks for us for the last 2 months. I haven't heard from my daughter in a few weeks. She usually sends a letter, like...
And swords are out.
Exactly.
Right there. Right there. Swords are out. Spell books are open.
Like, do you want us to just, send a spell to her? Well, she's not allowed to get those at her school. Like, they have strict rules on them, and I don't want her to get kicked out for, getting message spells in. Could you go up and take a look? Because I got to run the bar.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Or he just says, can you guys run the bar for me for a couple of nights? Well, okay.
No, you run the bar. We are the adventurers. We will break legs.
Exactly. So, and that's the thing, is that you've got that investment. And that's the kind of stuff that you want to have.
Yeah.
And just as invested as you are against an NPC villain you're chasing across the tundra to try and capture, who keeps slipping from your grasp.
You're going to be just as invested in these NPCs, Yeah.
So I think that's how you show players how they connect. You're letting them get that connection.
Yeah. You forge that connection first.
Yep. I think it's something that takes time. I think it's something that that you have to monitor, and it does take a certain sense of of storytelling to see that happen.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
All right.
So next week, it is the second Tuesday of the month, so we're doing another system spotlight, this time on SCP, the role-playing game. Secure, Contain, Protect.
Do we have clearance to even be able to run this?
We do not. I am considered D-class personnel, I believe.
All right.
You can find us on Twitter at @ST_Conclave. You can find us on Instagram, also at ST_Conclave. Listen to us live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave. And join us up on our Discord. Shoot us some questions. questions, join the discussion. You can find that link on our Twitter, as well as our website, storytellerconclave.com.
We'd like to thank our named Patreon members, especially this week. Knox in the Box, Sam, the Arcane Asylum, Sparkle Motion Veteran, and Hulavu. We always love the support that you've given us and helped us through everything. Our pre-show music, if you were listening to it before the show, is by Arcane Anthems. You can find that at patreon.com/arcaneanthems. Our intro music, which is Beyond the Warriors, is by Geefrog. You can find that at geefrog.bandcamp.com or on Google Music. And our outro music, which you're hearing right now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Midair Machine. You can find that at freemusicarchive.org.
And as always, a big shout out to our families, Vicky and Sean. Thank you so much for standing with us all this time. All of our friends have sat with us at our tables over the years. Give us these great stories to share with you, and you, every single one of our listeners.
Thank you.
We love you so much. Good night.
Love you. Good night.